Chapter 34, Dissociative. Jeff had risen early, stressed about Ryan, about Jeremy, about things he couldn't share with the crew yet. It made chasing sleep damn near impossible. He found the note on the counter, deciphered the words from Ryan's handwriting as he put it on a pot of coffee. I'm not in control anymore. Not completely. I don't want to hurt anyone else. I'm sorry. This is something I need to work out for myself. Don't come looking for me. Ryan. Jeff wasn't surprised. Not really. This is what Ryan did. This was his coping mechanism. He needed to feel like he was in control, even when he wasn't, whatever the cost to himself. The asshole never could say goodbye. The last part was what worried him the most. Ryan wasn't in control, but the battle was in his head. The stubborn son of a bitch is going to fight it all by himself, he muttered to himself. Jeff sighed, poured himself a cup of coffee, and flipped the note over to read through the report it was written on. By lunchtime, Jeff had gathered everyone back to the penthouse. Jeremy was on heavy medication for the pain. The knife had penetrated his liver, but thankfully had caused remarkably little damage. Livers were apparently very hardy organs. Good to know. They had taken him to his room and left him to sleep it off. The others gathered in the living room, with Lindsay, Michael, and Gavin practically sitting on top of each other, sharing one couch. Jack sat in one armchair, leaving the other noticeably empty, while Jeff paced back and forth from the kitchen. So, Ryan's gone, he announced simply as the others noticed his absence. Lindsay's face immediately fell. Shit. What? Since when? Michael asked, a hint of frustration in his voice. Last night sometime, Jeff said plainly. He left a note. He held up the hastily scrawled message on the report. Lindsay's eyebrows knitted together. What's it say? Jeff sighed, glancing at the note. He says he's not in control and doesn't want to hurt anyone else. He also said not to come looking for him. Oh, God. You don't think he might have... Gavin trailed off, not wanting to say the words, but it was clearly written in the consternation on his face. Jeff shook his head firmly. No. Despite what had happened yesterday, Jeff was now certain of this fact. Ryan was a fighter. He wouldn't go out like that. What's that it's written on? Jack asked, indicating the writing on the other side of the note. Police report. Confidential. Sent through by Ryan's contact in the LSPD. It's about Shadles. Jeff handed the report over for Jack to read, but he went on from memory. Detective Shane Dowell. Ryan shot him the day of the maze heist. He caught a ricochet to the side of the head. Spent a long time in the hospital. Fucked him up pretty good by the sounds of it, but he got cleared to go back to work. Michael and Lindsay's eyebrows raised in unison. First day back, Jeff continued. Shot his partner of 5 years. Didn't kill him, but came pretty close. That fucked him up even more. Holy shit, Michael muttered under his breath. Jeff went on. He was pretty quickly kicked off the force and ordered to undergo treatment for PTSD or some shit, but he checked himself out early. That's where it ends. It's probably why it was so hard to get the records. The cops don't want shit like this getting out. Gavin nodded, recalling how much trouble he and Jeremy were having getting the records. But he checked himself out only about a week before he ran into us the second time, when he shot me and framed Ryan. Jeff said it with almost a growl. He'd been quietly stalking us ever since, just waiting for the opportunity to get Ryan alone, by the sound of it. So why did he say Ryan killed his brother? Why would he lie? Gavin asked. Jeff shrugged. He didn't, Jack said simply, eyes still scanning over the report. He genuinely thought Ryan killed his brother. Says here he developed dissociative personality disorder, like symptoms after he recovered. They couldn't tell if it was psychological or physical because of the brain injury, but the psych report said when he shot his partner, it was because he blamed him for letting his brother die. That's fucked up, Michael commented. Meanwhile, Gavin had gotten out his phone and tapped away at the screen, pulling up a WebMD page. He read aloud from the screen. Says here, dissociation is like daydreaming. Alright. And dissociative identity disorder is a mental process which produces a lack of connection in a person's thoughts, memories, feelings, actions, or sense of identity, caused by trauma and is thought to be a coping mechanism. The person literally dissociates himself from a situation or experience that's too violent, traumatic, or painful to assimilate with his conscious self. Kind of like a split personality thing, then. He tapped again at his phone. Symptoms include depression, mood swings, sleep disorders, including night terrors. He trailed off, frowning as his eyes scanned the rest of the screen. Anyone else seeing some similarities here? Lindsay asked somewhat hesitantly. Everyone was thinking it. Ryan. Jack instinctively uttered his name. Jeff cringed and rubbed his eyes with one hand. Fucking doesn't help that Shadle's motherfucker was already in his head. Goddamn asshole even fucking said it. He told Ryan they weren't so different. Shit. Michael cursed under his breath. We gotta go after him, Jeff. A quiet but determined voice came from the hallway, where Jeremy was leaning against the wall with one arm, gripping his bandaged side with the other, a pained expression on his face. Jeremy, get the fuck back to bed, Jeff barked at him. He needs to know it's not his fault. Jeff shook his head as though it was about to interrupt, but Jeremy ignored him. Please, Jeff. I at least deserve to be part of this conversation. Jeff was hit with guilt. Jeremy was right. He let out a long breath, nodding in agreement. Yeah, you do. All right, sit down. Jeremy carefully limped over to the chair where Ryan would ordinarily have sat. Jeff went back to pacing behind the couch, frowning in thought. We're gonna go after him, though, right? Jeremy asked no one in particular as he sat down, looking around at all of them. Guys? There was a drawn-out silence as they all looked around at each other, waiting for someone to make a call. Lil J, he hurt you, Michael ventured carefully. You're lucky to be here at all. He said he can't control it. Maybe we should give him some space. Jeremy frowned and shook his head. We have to go after him, he insisted. This is all real messed up. It's not his fault, and he needs to know that. Lindsay clasped her hands together and spoke gently. Jeremy, I know you're worried. We all are. But if he doesn't want to be found, you're going to burn yourself out before you even figure out if he's left the city. I can promise you that. She sighed and continued more firmly. Right now, we can't afford that. I need all of you. Please, guys. The whole of Los Santos knows who he is now. We gotta go after him. Lindsay shook her head, about to protest again, but Jeff cut her off. Okay, he said simply. Okay? Jeremy repeated, a little surprised. Yeah, Jeff nodded. Do it. Whatever it takes. We find him. Lindsay narrowed her eyes at him, exchanging a glance that communicated something Jeremy didn't know the full extent of, which Jeff seemed to acknowledge, but he remained resolute. It's not going to be easy. It's Ryan. If he doesn't want to be found, we're not going to find him. But fuck it. We're going to try. The crew collectively nodded. It felt better. Right. Besides, Jeff added, I'm a man of my word. Motherfucker can't leave the crew unless it's in a body bag. Same goes for the rest of you. His words were macabre, but Jeff grinned and somehow it didn't feel so hopeless. That was more like it. That was the crew they knew. We can't afford to let anyone know Ryan's gone off on his own. He's a target as it is. If he's not with us, they'll be looking for him, Jack observed. Jeff nodded. Good point. In the meantime, we should think about employing a decoy. We can use Trevor, Lindsay suggested, already thinking ahead. They're about the same height. Under the jacket and mask, it shouldn't make much difference. She shrugged and added with a smirk. Just don't let him talk. He'll give it away. Jeff chuckled at the thought of Trevor impersonating the vagabond, but Lindsay might have a point. He could probably pull it off at a distance. All right, Lindsay, get Matt and Traco to relocate up here ASAP. This is going to be the new base of operations, so I can keep an eye on all of you assholes. Gavin groaned. That's like 8 people, Jeff, all living here? Jeff gave Gavin a look that could really only just begin to convey the frustration he must have felt having Gavin live with him, more or less rent-free, in his tiny-ass apartment when he basically adopted him years before they started the crew. Matt and I'll share, Jeremy volunteered, no stranger to living in share houses, or with Matt for that matter. Trevor can have Ryan's room till we find him. Thanks, Lil J, Jeff nodded, still glaring at Gavin. Where are we with the randoms? Lindsay suddenly asked no one in particular. Any new info? I mean, aside from what we found out about Shadles, not much. It looks like we set them back a long way, Jeremy explained. They lost a lot of people, but they're not exactly headless because they don't really function that way. I think I've said it before, but they're more like a flash mob. Anyone can make a call, and if enough people get on board with the idea, it just kind of goes ahead. The only thing they have in common is that they want to cause chaos and bring down the big gangs. I don't think they really know what they're getting themselves into. No shit, Jeff snorted. It's like they don't know what'll happen if the cops and drug gangs take back Los Santos. It's like they don't remember what it was like before we came along. They're not gonna like it if they ever find out. Not that they ever will. I'm gonna need you guys to keep an eye on them. Team Boston Tea Party! Gavin leaned over to high-five Jeremy. Jeremy shook his head but returned his high-five half-heartedly, quietly thankful he hadn't said Jervin instead. Alright, the other thing we still need to sort out is this video. Gotta put the final bits of editing on it, but then it should be good to go out. Just gotta consult with the, family about the timing. Make sure everyone's on the same page, Jeff mused. Jack, Michael, Jeremy, and Gavin exchanged a look between them before they all looked to Jeff. Something you want to tell us, Jeff? Jack probed. Jeff interlaced his tattooed fingers and pressed his hands under his chin pensively. Not yet. Soon. Michael cocked an eyebrow. You know, family is starting to sound almost a little too Sopranos, even for us. Jeff grinned his dopey, lopsided grin, reassuring them nothing overly sinister was going on. Hey, don't worry about it, he said in the most mobster-inspired accent he could muster, which spectacularly missed the mark and sent Gavin and Michael into fits of giggles. Michael imitated him, doing an equally bad job, defaulting back to a Jersey accent. Sure, don't worry about it. That was enough to set the others off, and Jeff could do little but roll his eyes and grin. Seriously, though, first priority, Ryan. Check his home. Lindsay, you know the address? Lindsay nodded. I'll come with you. I know where he hides his spare key. If he's not there, and I doubt he will be if he actually doesn't want to be found, but who fucking knows with him, check all the safe houses and any contacts he may have hit up. That's a start anyway. Should keep you busy for today. Lil J, you rest up. You don't need to be out there yet. Keep an eye on the randoms if you need to do something. Jeremy shifted uncomfortably, like maybe it wasn't enough, but he nodded, understanding. Everyone looked around expectantly. Jeff rubbed his hands together. Well, what are you waiting for? Go! The guys went to get the necessary gear, weapons mostly, and Jeremy limped back to his room. Lindsay lingered behind for a moment in the living room with Jeff. Are you sure that's a good idea, Jeff? She asked as soon as they were alone. I'll pick up the slack, Jeff reassured her. Lil J's right. We gotta get Ryan back. We need him, but... He rolled his eyes. As much as the stubborn asshole won't admit it, he needs us too. Lindsay nodded, understanding what he meant. I just hope you know what you're doing. Jeff smirked. Yeah, me too.